The first time my parents asked me to sell my grandparents' house to save my brother's career, I thought they were joking. The third time, my mom slid a stack of documents across my kitchen table and said, very calmly, "Alicia, if you don't sign these, your brother could lose everything." My name is Alicia Johnson. I'm 35 years old. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I am the legal owner of a little blue craftsman bungalow in a town called Maple Ridge, 3 hours away, and 100% of my grandparents' legacy. It is also apparently the only thing standing between my brother's failing entrepreneurial journey and whatever fresh disaster he lined up this time. This is the story of how my parents tried to guilt me into selling the only real security I've ever had, and how I chose to keep the house and let their choices finally, be their own problem. 1. The inheritance. I wasn't supposed to keep my grandparents, Harold and June, bought the Maple Ridge house in 1964. If you drove down Sycamore Street in August, you'd know exactly which one it was. The only yard with a hand-painted "Free Tomatoes" sign stuck in the ground, and an old porch swing with chipped white paint. Some of my earliest memories are in that house. Sleeping on the pull-out sofa in the living room under a crocheted afghan. Eating grilled cheese and tomato soup on TV trays in front of Wheel of Fortune. My grandpa carefully letting me help him fix things, even though my job was mostly holding the flashlight and nodding very seriously. I grew up in a split level in the Columbus suburbs. My dad worked in sales. My mom was a school secretary. My little brother, Jason, was born when I was 8. From the moment he could walk, Jason was the center of their universe. "I swear that boy is going to be a CEO one day," my dad would say when Jason cut the line on the playground and somehow convinced everyone else it had been their idea. Meanwhile, I was our reliable girl. I got good grades. I ran track. I kept my room clean and watched my brother after school while our parents worked. I did what I was supposed to do. They praised Jason's potential. They praised my usefulness. When I was 18, my grandparents sat me down at their dining table. The plastic tablecloth had little strawberries printed on it. Grandpa folded his hands and looked at me over his glasses. "Alicia," he said, "someday this house is going to be yours." I laughed. "Don't be morbid." "I'm not being morbid," he said. "I'm being practical. This place is paid off. No mortgage. Your grandmother and I talked about it. You're the one who's always here. You care about this place, about us." Grandma squeezed my hand. "Use it however you need, honey. Live here. Rent it out. Sell it if you have to. Just don't let anyone make you feel bad for doing what's best for you, especially not your parents." That last part stuck out. At the time, it just sounded like grandparents being dramatic about their own kid. I didn't think much of it. Life moved on. I went to Ohio State, moved into a tiny off-campus apartment, and graduated into a job as an HR generalist at a mid-sized logistics company. Boring to most people, but I liked it. Policies, structure, spreadsheets, things that made sense to me. Jason bounced from one thing to another. One semester at community college. Then, this isn't for me. A series of jobs he quit or got fired from. Always some story about how his manager didn't recognize his leadership style. Always some big idea around the corner. My parents, meanwhile, wrote checks. Loans for cars. Loans for online courses. Loans to tide him over. It was like watching them shovel money into a hole and then congratulating themselves on how much they cared. I still went to Maple Ridge almost every other month. I'd drive up on Friday after work, stay in my old attic room with the slanted ceiling, let Grandma fuss over me. When I was 28, Grandpa had a stroke. He never really recovered. A year later, he died. Grandma followed 2 years after that, quietly, in her sleep. The house went through probate. There was a simple will. A local attorney walked me through the paperwork. My name ended up on the deed. Just mine. Not mine and my parents. Not the Carter family. Mine. I stood on the front lawn the day the deed recorded, and the attorney handed me a thin folder with the county stamp. The maple tree in the front yard had those little helicopter seeds spinning down in the breeze. The porch steps creaked exactly the same way they always had. "Congratulations," the attorney said. "You're a homeowner." I didn't feel excited. I felt responsible. I made a choice then. I didn't move in. My job and life were in Columbus, but I also didn't sell it. Instead, I hired a local property manager. We did a few updates. Nothing major, just fixing the plumbing, fresh paint, refinishing the floors. Then we rented it out to a retired couple for a modest amount. The rent covered taxes, insurance, basic upkeep, and still left me a little extra each month that I stashed in a separate house savings account for bigger repairs later. It felt like doing exactly what my grandparents wanted, keeping the house in the family, making it work for me, not letting it become a money pit. My parents didn't say much about it. "At least it's not sitting empty," my mom said, which I took as reluctant approval. If there was anything more in their tone, I missed it. I didn't realize they were filing that little blue house away in their minds as Plan B for Jason. 2. The golden child's great idea. Jason's big break came when he was 31. I remember the night clearly because my mom called 3 times in a row, and she only does that when someone's in the hospital or when she's decided I haven't visited enough. "Alicia, you're not going to believe this," she said, breathless. "Your brother's business plan got picked up by an investor." I shifted my phone to my other ear and kept stirring my pasta. "What kind of investor?" "Some angel person," she said, "from Cincinnati, very successful. They loved his idea for a mobile detailing company. On-demand car care for busy professionals." Isn't that brilliant? It was fine. Not exactly world-changing, but fine. Apparently, Jason had pitched this investor at some meetup. They offered a small seed investment, and suddenly, Jason was a founder. My parents were ecstatic. "My son, the entrepreneur," my dad kept saying, like the words themselves added dollars to Jason's bank account. I was cautiously supportive. I sent Jason a congratulations text. I liked his launch posts on Instagram. I even offered to review his HR forms and safety policies for free. He declined. "Thanks, Alicia, but we've got it covered," he said. "My buddy Brandon is handling all the admin stuff. You know how corporate you can be." Corporate. I swallowed that one and moved on. For the first few months, things seemed okay. Jason posted pictures of himself in branded polo shirts, standing next to shiny SUVs in office park garages. He shared screenshots of 5-star reviews from customers with suspiciously generic names. My parents lent him money. Again, new equipment, a marketing push, a custom van. "Think about it this way," my dad told me over Sunday dinner. "Someday when this thing blows up, he'll be the one taking care of us. It's an investment in our future." I bit my tongue. "Hi," I thought. "I'm your firstborn child with a stable job, a 401k, and a health insurance plan that includes dental. But sure, put all your retirement hopes on the son who has bounced through 6 jobs and 3 half-finished business ideas in 5 years. Still, I kept my mouth shut. It wasn't my money. It wasn't my business. Until suddenly, it was. 3. They then asked. The first time my parents brought up the house was at a Sunday dinner in early spring. We were all at their place, the same split level I grew up in, with the same brown carpet in the hallway and the same Ohio State throw blanket draped over the back of the couch. My mom had made pot roast. Dad had the game on mute in the living room. Jason was at the table with us, scrolling on his phone between bites. "So, Alicia," my dad said casually, like he was asking if I'd seen a new show. "How's the Maple Ridge place doing?" "Good," I said. "The Fergusons renewed their lease. We had to replace the roof last year, but the reserve account covered most of it." My mom nodded like she was checking off a mental list. "And it's still just in your name, right?" I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. "Yes," I said slowly. "That's how Grandma and Grandpa set it up." My dad cleared his throat. "Well," he said, "we were thinking, it doesn't really make sense for that much money to be tied up in one old house, does it?" I felt my stomach tighten. "Dad," I said, "what's going on?" Jason finally looked up from his phone. He didn't meet my eyes. That alone told me more than anything else in that moment. My mom sighed dramatically, like sharing this information was a burden. "Your brother hit a little rough patch," she said. "A couple of contracts fell through. The investor pulled out. There was some equipment issue." "A little rough patch?" I said. "Mom, last week on Facebook you called him Columbus's next big business success story." She waved that away. "It's just cash flow. Temporary. But the business needs an injection to stay afloat. Banks are so predatory, and interest rates are insane right now." I looked at Jason. "How bad is it?" He clenched his jaw. "It's not that bad. We just need a runway. Couple months." My dad slid a glossy folder across the table. I recognized the logo of a local real estate agency on the front. "We talked to a realtor friend at church," he said. "Maple Ridge is really up and coming. Young families, good school district. He says you could get at least $260,000 for the place, maybe more." My heart started pounding. I opened the folder. Inside were printed MLS comps, a preliminary listing, even a basic net sheet showing estimated closing costs. "We figured," my dad went on, "if you sold the house, you could pay off the little bit of debt attached to it and still walk away with at least $230,000, more than enough to clear Jason's business debts and give him a cushion to rebuild." My mom clasped her hands. "You'd be saving your brother's future, Alicia." The room felt smaller. "Wait," I said. "You already talked to a realtor about selling my house?" "Our house?" My mom corrected silently with her eyes. "Alicia, honey," she said out loud, "you're doing fine. You've got your job, your little condo, your retirement account. You're stable. Your brother needs this more than you do. Family takes care of family." I stared at them. "I am family," I said. My dad frowned, like I'd said something ungrateful. "Of course you are," he said, "which is why we know you'll step up. You've always been the responsible one. You can handle starting over without that house? Jason can't." Jason finally spoke. "It's not a handout," he said defensively. "It's an investment. Once I scale this thing, I'll pay you back and then some. We could even put your name on the business, make you a partner." I almost laughed. I looked down at the comps, at the neat little lines of numbers reducing my grandparents' life to value per square foot. "You're asking me to give up the only asset I have," I said quietly, "so we can patch over Jason's mistakes." My mom's face tightened. "Don't say it like that." "How should I say it?" "Your brother took a risk," she said. "Real success comes from risk. Not everyone wants to sit in a cubicle for 40 years. There it was. The familiar jab. Your life is small. His life could be big. If only you'd get out of the way. I pushed the folder back toward my dad. "I'm not saying yes," I said. "I need time to think." "Think about what?" My mom snapped. "Your brother is drowning, and you're standing there on the shore, debating whether to throw the life preserver Grandma and Grandpa gave you." Jason shoved his chair back. "Forget it," he said. I knew this was a mistake. He stormed off down the hall, bedroom door slamming a second later. The silence that followed was thick. "We're not asking you to do this for us," my dad said finally. "We're asking you to do it for your brother. He's your flesh and blood." "So am I said again. I left without dessert. 4. The paper's on my table. For a few weeks, nothing happened. We had a couple of tense phone calls, a passive-aggressive text from my mom with a Bible verse about not storing up treasures on earth, a voicemail from my dad saying, "We just want you to think long-term about the family." I tried to compartmentalize. I went to work. I answered emails. I sat in HR meetings about PTO policy and wellness initiatives, while my brain ran in circles around the same question. Am I being selfish? One Sunday afternoon, my parents came over to my place in Columbus to talk. They brought a casserole, always a bad sign. We sat at my small dining table. My mom's eyes looked puffy, like she'd been crying. We talked to the realtor again. My dad said, "Market's only getting hotter. If you wait, you might miss the peak. And if Jason's business folds, that's it. He'll have to declare bankruptcy. It'll follow him forever." My mom slid another folder out of her purse. Inside were more documents. A letter of intent to list the Maple Ridge property, pre-filled with my name. A draft purchase agreement, blank on the buyer's side, but with a generic local title company already specified. And then, the kicker, a typed family agreement stating that proceeds of the sale would be shared among family members according to need. My name was at the top, under seller. My parents' names were listed as advisors. Jason's name appeared next to beneficiary of business support. There were places for all 4 of our signatures. "I had Janet from church help us put that together," my mom said. "She's a paralegal. It just formalizes what we've already discussed." "We haven't discussed anything," I said slowly. "You've told me what you want. I haven't agreed." My mom's voice trembled. "Alicia, please. Do you really want to watch your brother lose everything when you could stop it with one signature? What would Grandma say?" I thought of Grandma's hand squeezing mine over the strawberry tablecloth. "Don't let anyone make you feel bad for doing what's best for you, especially not your parents." My dad leaned forward. "If Jason goes down, we go down too, you know," he said. "We co-signed on some of the equipment. If he folds, we'll have to refinance the house. Maybe sell. We're not as young as we used to be." There it was. The real fear. Their retirement, tied to my brother's mess, and now, by extension, tied to my house. "Why did you co-sign?" I asked quietly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because we knew what you'd say," my mom snapped. "You'd tell us not to believe in our own son." "To be realistic?" I stared at the papers, at my own name, flat and black on the page. "Just sign, Alicia," my mom whispered. "Don't overcomplicate this." I closed the folder slowly. "No," I said. My dad's face darkened. "You're being dramatic," he said. "I'm being cautious," I said. "I need to understand exactly what I'm signing, how the deed works, what happens to the proceeds, what this family agreement actually means." "You're making this harder than it needs to be," my mom said, voice rising. "You've always been like this, picking everything apart, acting like you're smarter than everyone." "It's called reading the fine print," I said. "You think your grandparents would want you to sit on that house while your brother's life falls apart?" My dad demanded. "I think my grandparents would want me to think for myself," I said. "With all due respect, Alicia," he said, and whenever my father said, "with all due respect," there was none. "This isn't just about you. You're part of a family. We sacrifice for each other." "Except I've already sacrificed plenty," I shot back. "I helped with Jason's tutoring. I babysat him. I stayed home while you went to his games. I listened to more, if Jason applies himself, speeches than I can count. When have any of you ever asked me what I need? My mom flinched. My dad stood up. We're not going to sit here and be attacked in your home, he said. We raised you better than this. He picked up the folder and then stopped. Actually, he said, laying it back down deliberately. We'll leave this here. Look it over. Call us when you're ready to stop being stubborn. They left, without touching the casserole. The folder sat on my table like a live grenade. 5. The late night deep dive. I didn't sleep much that night. At midnight, I got out of bed, padded barefoot into the kitchen, and opened the folder again. I scanned the family agreement, noting all the vague language, according to need. At the discretion of the advisors. No specific percentages, no timelines, no protections. Whoever that church paralegal was, she knew just enough to be dangerous. I looked at the listing agreement. My name as seller matched the deed. It was my property. That part was straightforward, but something about all of it itched at me, like a tag in the back of a shirt you can't stop noticing. I opened my laptop. I'm an HR person. I live in policy documents and legal compliance and risk mitigation. I know how to read official language. I know when something smells off, so I did what I always do when something feels wrong. I researched. Property ownership, Sarham 01. I pulled up the county's property search site and typed in the Maple Ridge address. There it was, a scanned copy of the deed. My name in old-fashioned typewriter font, recorded the year Grandma died. No liens, no second mortgage. Clean. I took a screenshot and saved it. Then I started reading about undue influence and elder financial abuse and family pressure around inherited property. I found forum posts from people whose siblings had manipulated aging parents into signing over homes, articles about caregivers being written out of wills, legal blogs warning about family agreements that weren't worth the paper they were printed on. The same pattern repeated over and over. Someone more responsible gets guilted into giving up the one asset they have to bail out relatives who don't change their behavior anyway. They end up with nothing to show for decades of work. Generational wealth, one article called it, bleeding out not to opportunity, but to entitlement. By 2 a.m., my eyes were burning, but I had something else buzzing in my brain now. Anger. Not hot, explosive anger. Cold, clear anger. The kind that makes you sit up straighter and think, wait, why is it my job to fix this? I pulled out the original folder my grandparents' attorney had given me years ago. I still had it in my file cabinet, tucked between tax returns and my car title. There was a copy of the will. I read it. The house is to be conveyed in full to our granddaughter Alicia Johnson, to be used according to her judgment and best interests. No conditions, no requirements. My grandparents had been very, very specific. Use it however you need, honey. Live here. Rent it out. Sell it if you have to. Just don't let anyone make you feel bad for doing what's best for you, especially not your parents. They hadn't just been being dramatic. They'd known exactly what they were doing. Calling in a professional. The next morning, I made an appointment with an estate attorney in Columbus. Her name was Alexis Morales. Mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Her receptionist offered me coffee in a mug that said, "Trust me, I'm a lawyer." I slid the folder across her desk. My parents want me to sell my grandparents' house to bail out my brother's failing business. I said, they brought me these documents. I haven't signed anything. I just need to know exactly what my options are. Alexis flipped through the paperwork. She read fast, marking things with a yellow highlighter as she went. After a few minutes, she sat back. "Okay," she said. "First question. The deed to the Maple Ridge property is in your name alone, correct? No life estate for your parents? No co-ownership? It's just me, I said. I checked the county records last night. Good, she said. Second, did your grandparents express any conditions on the inheritance? Verbal promises to your parents? They told me to use it however I needed, I said. They also explicitly warned me not to let my parents pressure me. Alexis actually smiled at that. Your grandparents were smart, she said. Here's the short version. You don't owe anyone that house. Not your parents, not your brother. If you choose to sell it, that's your decision. If you choose to keep it, that's also your decision. This, she tapped the family agreement, is basically a wish list your parents cooked up. It's not enforceable unless you sign it. And even then, it's vague enough to cause more problems than it solves. So they can't force a sale? I asked. Absolutely not, she said. They might pressure you emotionally. They might threaten to cut you off. They might call you selfish. But from a legal standpoint, you hold all the cards. I exhaled slowly. Okay, I said. And what about preemptive steps to make sure this doesn't become a fight later? Now you're speaking my language, Alexis said. She outlined a few options. Put the house into a revocable living trust with me as trustee and beneficiary, specifically stating that the property and any proceeds were for my use only. Record a memorandum of trust with the county, which wouldn't change much day to day, but would make it harder for anyone else to mess with title. Update my will to name a backup beneficiary who wasn't my parents or brother, in case something happened to me. Basically, she said, you can build a paper wall around this asset. It won't stop your family from arguing, but it will give you a very clear line to point to. I chewed my lip. And if I did sell and use the money to pay off my brother's business debts, could I protect myself in any way? She raised an eyebrow. Do you want to sell? She asked. I thought of the sun through the Maple Ridge kitchen window, the porch swing, the little free tomato sign. I thought of my parents' faces when they said, your brother, but meant our retirement. I thought of all the times I'd been the responsible one, and how that had never once translated into the one we invest in. No, I said finally, I don't. Then we don't need to waste time on that scenario, Alexis said. My recommendation? Put the house in a trust. Move forward with whatever serves your life. If your brother's business fails, that's unfortunate. But it's his business, not yours. I swallowed. Can they sue me? I asked, because that was where my brain always went. For not sacrificing your inheritance? Her mouth curled. They can file whatever they want. It won't go far. And if they did, it would only make your position stronger. Judges don't look kindly on families trying to claw back assets a deceased person clearly left to someone else. We got to work. By the time I left her office, I'd signed paperwork to create the Maple Ridge Trust, with me as both trustee and primary beneficiary. The trust's purpose stated in black and white, maintaining and using the Maple Ridge property for the benefit and security of Alicia Johnson. My parents and Jason were explicitly excluded. Alexis promised to record the trust with the county. You're allowed to protect yourself, she said as I gathered my things. It doesn't make you a bad daughter. It makes you a person with boundaries. Boundaries, a word my family had never liked. 6. The fight. The next family dinner was not great. We met at my parents' house again. My dad grilled burgers. My mom made her special pasta salad. Jason was late, as usual. The atmosphere felt off from the moment I walked in. Tense, charged. My mom barely said hello. We sat down to eat. My dad cleared his throat. Well, he said, have you thought about what we talked about? Yes, I said. A lot. And? My mom demanded. And I decided I'm not selling the Maple Ridge house, I said. Silence, like literal fork halfway to mouth silence. My dad stared at me. My mom's face went slack. Jason let out a short, humorless laugh. You've got to be kidding, he said. I'm not, I said calmly. I talked to an attorney. I set up a trust. The house is legally protected now. I'm keeping it. You did what? My mom said, voice rising. It's my property, I said. Grandma and Grandpa left it to me. I'm honoring their wishes. Honor? My dad barked. Your brother is about to lose his entire business, and you're talking about honoring? I set my burger down. Jason's business is not my responsibility, I said. Neither is the debt you chose to take on to support him. My mom slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware jump. We did that debt for him, she said, and for us. He's our shot at something better. You think your little HR job is going to change this family's future? There it is, I said quietly. What you really think of what I do. Don't twist my words, she snapped. I don't have to twist them, I said. You just made it very clear. My dad's face had gone red. You ungrateful girl, he said. We raised you. We helped with your student loans. We let you stay here after college. I paid rent after college, I interjected. You asked me to. I paid my loans myself, and I never once asked you to co-sign anything for me. Jason shoved his plate away. You're really going to let me drown over a stupid house? He said. Do you know what this will do to my credit? To my reputation? To Mom and Dad? I didn't ask you to borrow money, I said. I didn't ask you to overexpand. I didn't ask you to create a business plan that falls apart the second cash flow slows down. You always think you're better than me, he said. No, I said. I think I'm responsible for my choices, and you're responsible for yours. My mom's eyes filled with tears. Family doesn't talk like this, she cried. Family doesn't try to bully one child into sacrificing her future to prop up another child's bad decisions, I said. We're not bullying you, my dad said. We're asking you to step up like a good daughter. I have stepped up, I said, my whole life. This is where I stop. Jason stood abruptly, chair scraping against the tile. You know what? He said. You're dead to me. Keep your stupid house. Don't come crying to us when you end up old and alone. He stormed out, slamming the front door so hard a picture rattled on the wall. My mom sobbed. My dad pointed a shaking finger at me. I hope you're happy, he said. You just destroyed this family. No, I said quietly. I just stopped being your safety net. I stood, grabbed my purse, and walked out. 7. Letting it fall. If this were a movie, there would be a dramatic montage of Jason losing everything in slow motion. In reality, it was a lot of small, ugly moments stretched over months. I heard some of it from mutual friends. Some from Facebook posts before I muted him. Some from my parents' panicked voicemails before I stopped answering those too. The investor formally pulled out. Jason had to return what was left of the initial seed money. Client complaints stacked up, missed appointments, damaged vehicles, poor communication. His Google reviews went from 5 stars, great service, to avoid at all costs. He'd over-leveraged everything, new vans on loans, high-end equipment bought on credit, a lease for a showroom office that never saw a single paying walk-in. When cash stopped flowing, the dominoes started falling. Vans repossessed, equipment seized, business account frozen. My parents, who had co-signed on some of those loans, suddenly found themselves on calls with bankers who did not care that he's a good boy who just needs a chance. The house I grew up in went on the market. I found out from Zillow, listing photos of my old bedroom, staged with generic gray bedding. The kitchen where my mom once taped my report cards to the fridge, now featuring quartz countertops and a newly updated backsplash. It hurt, but it wasn't my decision. It wasn't my mess. My parents called. A lot. They left voicemails. Alicia, we just want to talk. Your father is stressed out of his mind. His blood pressure is through the roof. You're really going to let us lose everything while you sit on that house? One message late at night, my mom's voice hoarse from crying. How can you do this to your own brother? I listened to them exactly once. Then I blocked their numbers. Not out of spite, out of self-preservation. I kept in touch with one person from that side of my life. My Aunt Lisa, my dad's younger sister who'd always been the black sheep for moving out of state and not helping with family. She'd been at my grandparents' house a lot near the end. She knew the whole story. She called me on an unknown number one day after my parents' house went into contract. They're telling everyone you abandoned them, she said bluntly after we'd caught up on surface-level stuff. I figured, I said. What they're not telling people, she continued, is that your dad took out a home equity line of credit to fund Jason's third pivot. Or that your mom co-signed a lease without reading it. Or that they asked you to sign a stack of papers that would have wiped out your one real asset. I swallowed. How are they? I asked, because despite everything, I still cared. Devastated, she said, ashamed, angry, but also not really willing to look in the mirror. They keep acting like this just happened to them, like a storm they had no part in creating. That sounds about right, I said. Aunt Lisa sighed. I'm proud of you, you know, she said, for saying no. I blinked. No one's ever said that to me, I admitted. Well, I'll say it again then, she said. You did the right thing for you. And if Harold and June were here, they'd be saying it too. My throat tightened. Thanks, I whispered. I spent a lot of that year in therapy, untangling the knot of guilt and fear and anger that had been building since childhood, learning that family and obligation are not synonyms, unlearning the belief that my worth was directly proportional to how much I could sacrifice. My therapist, a calm woman named Dana, who kept a dish of jelly beans on the coffee table, said something that stuck with me. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is decline to participate in someone else's self-destruction. Decline to participate, not destroy, not punish. Just step back and decline. That's what keeping the house was, I realized. Not revenge, resistance. 8. What I did with the house. About 6 months after the big blowout, the Fergusons decided to move to Florida to be closer to their grandkids. They gave notice. My property manager called. We can have it cleaned and listed again in a couple of weeks, he said. Rents have gone up in Maple Ridge. You could get another couple $100 a month. I thought about it. I was in a very different headspace now than when I'd first inherited the house. I'd gotten a promotion at work to HR manager. It came with a raise, but also with more stress. More people problems on my plate that I had absolutely no control over. My Columbus condo was fine. A 1-bedroom near a Target and a freeway on-ramp. Convenient. Bland. The Maple Ridge house, on the other hand. I drove up one Saturday to check on it. The porch swing was still there. The maple tree had grown taller, its branches arching over the sidewalk. The free tomatoes sign was gone, of course, but I could still picture it. Inside, the place smelled like dust and pine saw. Standing in the middle of the living room, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Peace. Not the fragile kind that can be shattered by a phone call. A solid, grounded sense that this space was mine. Not to hoard, not to flaunt, just to inhabit. Dana's voice popped into my head. What do you want, Alicia? Not what's expected, not what's safest for everyone else. What do you want? I walked slowly from room to room. The kitchen, where Grandma had taught me to make her banana bread. The tiny dining room, where we played card games for pennies. The attic bedroom, with the slanted ceiling and the window that framed the tops of the trees. What did I want? I wanted to stop living my life in reaction to other people's choices. I wanted a home that felt like mine, down to the roots. I wanted to honor my grandparents by actually living in the house they'd left me, instead of treating it like a backup plan. By the time I drove back to Columbus that evening, I'd made a decision. 2 months later, I moved to Maple Ridge. I sold the Columbus condo, paid off the small remaining mortgage, and used the equity to update the bungalow properly. New HVACs, better insulation, refinished hardwoods, a fresh coat of blue paint on the exterior. I kept the porch swing. I planted tomatoes in the yard. I started commuting to Columbus 3 days a week, an hour and 15 minutes each way. It wasn't ideal, but my company agreed to a hybrid schedule, and I filled the longer drives with podcasts and audiobooks instead of panicked calls from my mother. I made new routines. Saturday mornings at the Maple Ridge Farmers Market. Evening walks down Sycamore Street with a neighbor's dog who needed more exercise than we can give him. A book club at the library, where we talked more about our messy lives than the actual novels half the time. I got to be Alicia, not the responsible daughter, or Jason's sister, or the one with the house. Just me. One day in late summer, I was sitting on the porch swing with a glass of iced tea when a familiar car pulled slowly up to the curb, my parents' Toyota. My body tensed automatically. My mom stepped out first. She'd lost weight. My dad followed, moving more slowly than I remembered. For a second, I thought about running inside and pretending I wasn't home. Then I remembered this was my house. I set my glass down, stood, and waited. "Hi," my mom said, voice small. "Hi," I said. Up close, I could see the lines on her face had deepened. My dad's hair had more gray in it. They stood at the bottom of the steps, like they weren't sure they were allowed to come any closer. "Can we talk?" my dad asked. I considered. "I'm not going to fight with you," I said. "If you're here to rehash the house or Jason's business, we can skip it. My answer hasn't changed." My mom shook her head quickly. "No," she said. We're not here to ask you for anything." "I find that hard to believe," I said, more bluntly than I would have a year ago. My dad winced. "We lost the house," he said. "You probably saw. We're renting an apartment now. Jason's gone." "Gone?" I repeated, cold panic flaring. "He moved to Nashville," my mom said. "Somebody he met online said there were better opportunities there. He left without even telling us goodbye. We found out from a neighbor. He blocked our numbers." I sat back down slowly. The universe has a dark sense of humor. "We realized," my mom said, eyes filling with tears, "that we messed up. With him. With you. With all of it." My dad swallowed. "We treated Jason's potential like a lottery ticket, and you like a safety net," he said. "It wasn't fair. It wasn't right." The words I'd wanted to hear for decades. They didn't land like fireworks. More like a gentle rain on ground that had already gone hard and cracked. "I'm sorry," my mom whispered, "for the things I said, for calling you selfish, for acting like this house belonged to all of us when it doesn't." I believed that she meant it in that moment. I also knew she was still the same person who had slid those papers across my table and called me dramatic for hesitating. "Thank you for saying that," I said. We stood in an awkward triangle. My dad cleared his throat. "We don't expect you to forgive us," he said. "We just wanted you to know we understand why you did what you did, and that you were right to protect yourself. I exhaled. I do forgive you, I said, but I'm not going back to the way things were. My mom nodded quickly. We don't expect that, she said. Boundaries, Dana's voice reminded me. Compassion with boundaries. If you want to have a relationship with me, I said carefully, it will be on new terms. No more financial conversations unless I bring them up. No more guilt trips about family obligations. No more comparing me to Jason. If any of that starts, I'm leaving, or I'll hang up. My parents exchanged a glance. That's fair, my dad said quietly. My mom sniffled. Can we at least come sit on the porch for a bit? She asked. I haven't been here since your grandmother's funeral. I hesitated. Then I stepped aside. Shoes off on the porch, I said automatically. And my mom laughed through her tears. We taught you that, she said. You did, I said, and Grandma reinforced it. We sat there for an hour, talking about small things. My mom asked about my job. I told her about the new analytics software we'd rolled out, and how half the managers still forgot their passwords every week. My dad pointed out a patch of the lawn where Grandpa used to set up the old sprinkler for us to run through. They didn't ask for money. They didn't bring up the house. When they left, my mom hugged me tightly. My dad patted my shoulder awkwardly. It didn't magically fix everything. There were still years of patterns to unwind, resentments to process, stories to rewrite. But it was something. The next day, I went to the hardware store and bought wood and paint. That afternoon, I hammered a small sign into the front yard. Free tomatoes, it said in imperfect letters. A little nod to the past. A reminder to myself that I can be generous without bleeding myself dry. 9. The cost and the payoff. It would be neat to say that after all this, my life became perfect. It didn't. I still had lonely nights. I still had moments where a wave of guilt would crash over me out of nowhere. Standing in the grocery store, looking at a jar of my mom's favorite pasta sauce, thinking, I could have saved them from this. Then I'd remember the spreadsheet I'd made in my head. On one side, the cost of selling the house for my brother. On the other, the cost of keeping it. Selling meant losing my one major asset, tying my financial future to a business I had no control over, reinforcing a lifetime dynamic in which my needs came last, gambling my grandparents' legacy on my parents' wishful thinking. Keeping it meant letting my brother and parents face the consequences of their own choices. Being called selfish, ungrateful, heartless. Weathering family members' judgment. Sitting with my own discomfort instead of fixing it with a quick sacrifice. I chose the second column. It hurt. It also freed me. With the house as a foundation, I started making other choices from a place of stability instead of fear. I negotiated harder for raises and promotions, knowing I had a safety net that wasn't my parents' approval. I started saving more aggressively for retirement, not to be the kid who will bail out the parents, but to be the older woman who never has to ask her children's permission to live her life. I dated differently. It sounds unrelated, but it wasn't. Once I stopped defaulting to, what do you need? How can I help? How can I contort myself to fit into your disaster? With my family, I stopped doing it with men too. I stopped apologizing for having boundaries. Stopped apologizing for having property in my own name. Stopped apologizing for saying no without a 10-minute explanation. I don't know where Jason is now. Every once in a while, someone sends me a screenshot of a new Instagram account that might be him. A fitness page, a mindset coaching brand, a crypto hustle. The names change, the patterns don't. Maybe someday he'll call from another unknown number. Maybe he won't. Either way, I know what I'll say if he asks why I didn't sell the Maple Ridge house when he needed me. I'll say, because I needed me too. 10. If you're where I was, if you're still listening to this, there's a good chance you're where I was a couple of years ago. The responsible one, the good daughter, the one everyone turns to when there's a bill to be paid, a mess to be cleaned up, a sibling's latest catastrophe to be smoothed over. Maybe there's a house involved, or a retirement account, or just your emotional labor. Maybe your family is saying the same things mine did. Family takes care of family. You're doing better than your brother, sister, cousin. You're the only one who can fix this. Here's what I wish someone had told me sooner. You are allowed to step out of the role they wrote for you. You're allowed to look at a situation and say, this is not my responsibility. You're allowed to protect the things, tangible and intangible, that were given to you to build your own life. Protecting your stability isn't a betrayal. Sometimes it's the only way to make sure the generational story changes at all. My brother's business failed. My parents lost their house. I kept my grandparents' bungalow, not out of greed, but out of respect. For them, for myself, for the years I spent being responsible with nothing to show for it. Now, when I walk through the Maple Ridge kitchen in the morning, sunlight pouring across the countertops, I don't think, I chose this over my family. I think, I finally chose to include myself in my family's future. And that has made all the difference.